Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are joining us from across the United States or beyond. Great you could be with us. We've really got an exciting panel today, so can't wait to welcome them in. Today we're going to be diving into winning the mega event era. So we're going to debrief the recent FIFA World Cup. We're going to look ahead to the other major international sporting events and have a look at how communities, destinations, tourism businesses can drive value and positive outcomes from this sort of what's been called the decade of international sport. And I'm delighted that we can welcome in a truly all-star panel of destination leaders and experts. Martha Sheridan, President and CEO of Meet Boston, and she's got so many great stories, what went on there with the Scottish fans, etc. Hosting, of course, the FIFA World Cup. A little bit of man of the moment, Adam Burke. They're going to be the host of the Summer Olympics, which we'll be discussing, and of course also hosted FIFA World Cup games. So Adam will be sharing insights from LA. And then Brent Bernasconi. So San Diego was not a host city of the FIFA World Cup, as most communities were not across the US, but Brent's going to be sharing insights and examples on how a supporting city, a city outside the immediate host areas, could take advantage of a mega event with the marketing and promotion and work they did, both with LA, California, etc. My name's Chris Adams. I'm Head of Research and Insights. So delighted you could join us today. We're going to be looking at the webinar in 4 parts you can see here. We'll be doing a quick review of the FIFA World Cup. We're going to identify 6 best practices that really apply to any sporting event. It doesn't have to be a mega sporting event, how you can drive value and manage some of the challenges that come with sporting events or events of any size or type. We'll then meet with our panelists and talk through the examples and insights they can share, both from the FIFA World Cup, but looking ahead to the other events, and then we'll have time for Q&A with you. So please take advantage of that and put your questions and answers in that tab. And all the research slides and resources from today are going to be available on our website, and we'll be summarizing the six best practices I'll be talking about in an article. So let's dive into a quick sort of debrief and update on the FIFA World Cup and Viva España. Of course, Spain came out victorious. Early on, the predictions were for a estimated 1.5 to 2 million international visitors across the 3 countries. But then, of course, some reality set in, geopolitics, international conflicts that we certainly couldn't have perhaps predicted. There were friction on visa issues, and it meant the actual results appear to be more subdued. So the best estimates that are available right now, and we accessed a whole range of resources, that these were just estimated by Visa, around 600,000 international visitors came to North America, at least in part for the World Cup. We were just chatting before the webinar, and hopefully these might be a little bit on the low side. Hopefully it's closer to the million, but certainly below some of the early estimates, which highlights that these bigger picture issues really do make a difference. And in fact, overseas visitor numbers into the US in June and July, excluding Mexico and Canada, were actually down 4.7% year on year, but between 2025 and 2026. So with the help of our friends at Key Data, and a shout out to Lucy and the team there, we had a close look at both hotel and vacation rental performance across the host cities. A mixed picture. 9 of the 11 US host cities saw occupancy down year on year, but almost everyone across the entire period saw very strong growth in ADRs and RevPAR across their hotel inventory. And vacation rentals were a particular area of strength, with almost every city seeing very strong growth, even as capacity in that sector grew. So obviously an increasingly important part of the event picture in terms of accommodation types. We had a look at spending from a variety of sources, and this was also a bright picture. I want to call out in particular that stat there, 33% rise. Visa actually just released that yesterday, 33% growth for small businesses in the host cities. So hopefully we'll get even more detail on that number. With our friends at Arrivalist, Jacob and the team there, we did a deep dive into the spending and travel patterns of US World Cup visitors. So this is the domestic side of the equation. And those numbers look to be more robust, certainly in the sort of 1.5 to 2.5 million range of Americans, including obviously a huge expat population traveling around the World Cup. Spending was up around 89% from these World Cup visitors over a typical domestic traveler. And they stayed longer, as you can see on this slide, and around 7 out of 10 of them, depending on the host city, traveled on to other parts and regions beyond the host cities before or after match days. So it's been called the Decade of Sport. Let's just remind ourselves of what's coming up over the next sort of 8 years. And the Olympics, the next so-called mega event, the Summer Olympics. And as you can see from our friends at Future Partners, there's very strong interest from international travelers in coming to the United States around this event. But as we saw with the FIFA World Cup, our challenge is to turn aspiration into action. And one stretch or Olympic target would be to meet or exceed the Paris Olympics numbers. 1.7 million international overnight visitors came for the Paris Olympics. We can ask Adam what he's anticipating. Other major events. North Carolina will be hosting one of the biggest participant sporting events in the world, the World University Games in 2029. The Soccer World Cup, the women's edition, looks pretty certain to be returning to the United States in 2031, with the US being the principal host and lead on a North American bid. There'll be a number of games in Jamaica, Costa Rica, and Mexico, but predominantly the games will be in the US. 48 teams again, so that event should rival the men's edition with exciting opportunities. And obviously the women's game is growing globally. And that's also true in rugby, a passion of mine. The Rugby World Cup, both men's and women's edition, is coming to the US in 2031 and 2033. Between 400,000 and 500,000 international visitors came to the UK and French editions over the last decade. And it's reached a critical time. The 2031 tournament is whittling down the 27 applicant cities to 16 likely host cities. So if you can be connecting with your sports commissions or DMOs, whoever's working on that bid, the next few months will be critical there in deciding where those games are hosted. There'll also obviously be training camp opportunities as well. So rounding off is obviously the Winter Olympics returning to Salt Lake City in 2034. There's also other world championships and volleyball, wrestling, etc. coming. So let's just summarize 6 best practices for destinations, not just for mega events, really for sporting events of any types. How can you maximize the benefits and minimize or mitigate some of the challenges that come with sporting events or events that can be large and impactful both positively and negatively? So the first and most powerful is to empower your community to welcome the world. So the FIFA World Cup went viral, not really based on advertising, PR, or promotion, but through millions of stories from international visitors falling in love with America. So whether it was ranch dressing or the Waffle House or Buc-ee's, they shared their stories. And so obviously by empowering your community, creating opportunities and places for them to meet and interact with international visitors, hopefully all you have to do is let the magic happen and then curate, share, and boost those stories. Number two, prudence and practicality. And I think Adam can talk to this. They've defined themselves, LA, as the no-build Olympics. Particularly important with declining trust in institution and governments that we ensure that these mega events and really events of all types work for the local community, not just from a sports or a business or even a tourism perspective. So whether it's not over investing in infrastructure that won't be used after the event, setting realistic goals and managing expectations, minimizing crowding issues or the displacement effect, critically important that we focus on that community. And I'll come back to that in a moment. Facilities absolutely, though, can make the difference. And so prudent, smart investments in the right facilities are highlighted by a couple of standout examples here. Kansas City hosted 4 teams for training in addition to all the World Cup games, and that was based off the back of their exceptional training and performance facilities in soccer. And Oklahoma City, a shout out to Mike Knobb and the many business, tourism, and government and community leaders who turned an incredible vision into a reality, taking a disused sort of canal and river space and turning it into a world-class river sports facility. They're going to be hosting the Olympics, all the paddle sports, and also they've got another exceptional facility in softball that will be hosting the softball Olympics. So great examples there. Number 4, working with others. We want to ensure that visitors extend beyond the host cities and travel around. And so Washington State set up 9, count them, 9 fan zones across the states, not just to encourage visitors to get out and about and stay in touch with the World Cup as they traveled, but they provided an incredible gathering place to connect the visitors with locals who shared a passion in sports. And Washington State also worked with British Columbia, 2 countries, 1 journey, and extended their World Cup marketing around that. And arguably, with the news of the last few days and even today, this sort of cross-border collaboration with Canada has arguably never been more important. Number 5, community-centered. We've already talked about this. At their heart, sporting events need to work for the local community. We've sponsored research over many years, several years now actually, with Cimarron Global and Longwoods, which highlights that sporting events are hugely popular with local residents, and they provide really a sort of avenue for having a wider conversation about events and tourism and how they can work for everybody. And then a standout example of community engagement is the Terre de Jour, the Land of Sports program in France around the Paris Olympics. 24 million residents were engaged, thousands of local communities encouraging sports and physical activity, and a huge range of sort of connections domestically and globally with sports associations and athletes. And it's considered one of the most enduring and successful legacy of the Paris Olympics. So finally, mega events should obviously only be a small part of your broader sports event strategy. Applying these and other best practices to every type of sporting event that you've focused on. So whether it's from college to amateur to school or pro, you can see here that sporting events are a big part of US travelers' passions and behaviors. And in fact, they're an even bigger part with the cities that are on the panel today. You can see up to 40% of all their recent or likely US visitors have been on a sporting event trip in the previous 12 months. So very important part of the sort of way, particularly for the shoulder and off season in terms of driving visitation. So that's a quick summary of best practices. We'll share that in an article. Let's do a quick survey question asking for your input, please. So for your destination, so you can answer obviously whether you're at a destination organization, CVB, or you're a business in a community. What did your destination do around the World Cup? Did you undertake advertising for domestic or international? Did you develop specific content or itineraries? Did you work with other destinations on touring routes? Did you lean into the whole fan zone or watch party area? Or did you have no specific sort of marketing activities? So let's just take another moment here to get a response, and let's close it off. 3, 2, 1. Okay, you can see a broad cross section of people. So around just under 40% were doing advertising to both international and domestic. Almost 2/3 had World Cup specific content. About half were engaging around social media. And you can see the other numbers there. Over 2/3 encouraged or promoted fan zone or watch parties, a really rich area as I highlighted. So we'll be now hearing from our panelists, their insights around what they did and around the FIFA World Cup and looking ahead to the other mega events. So let's join Martha, Adam, and Brent. Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks for having us, Chris.
Okay, so why don't we kick it off with a stat or a story from the recent FIFA World Cup, something that surprised or delighted you, that you hadn't anticipated or perhaps exceeded expectations. So, Martha, do you want to kick it off, please? Oh, I think you're muted,
Hi,
Martha.
everyone. Thanks for
Thanks.
joining today. It's nice to be with you all and with my colleagues on this on the screen. So, I mean, I think people by now probably know that the biggest story out of Boston was perhaps that we ran out of beer a few times during the World Cup, which isn't completely true. We did run out of certain types of beer, but we did have some very robust consumers here in Boston during the World Cup, and I think for us it was, Scotland is the love story here for us. Of course, we hosted many um, individuals from different nations, but the Scottish really took to Boston. We have a lot of shared heritage here. Being Celtic, Boston is a very Irish city, so that helped a lot. And we absolutely loved just the fact that we had so many Scots here, and they brought so much joy to our city. For us, as far as stats go and the impact that the games had here. We all, I think, in the beginning overestimated, what hotel room pickup would be like. Where we run a high occupancy here already in the mid 80s during the summer months. So were we thinking we were going to bump over 90, 95 during the matches? We didn't. We held flat, and I think Chris just talked about, most cities or some were down, some held flat. We held flat with occupancy, but boy, my hotels made a lot of money during the World Cup. We had a 24% increase in RevPAR over a 5-week period. And when you think about what that increase translates to, it's obviously going to help the tax coffers in the city, right? And in the state. So that's always a big thing. But just the fact that, hotels love to operate on a margin. So they made more money with fewer guests. So that was good for them. Profitability has been really tough for hotels over these last many years as the RevPAR hasn't grown as much as the cost of operating a hotel. So that was big. And then for us, it was just we had incredible spend in other areas. If you look at data from Bank of America and from um, other entities, Boston was at the top of the list in increase in consumer spending in our area, particularly in bars and restaurants during the World Cup. So, I think most of all, though, and I don't like to boil everything down to stats. I'd like to just, point out that what the World Cup did for Boston is it made Boston fall in love with Boston again. And, that was something really special for us. I think every US city, Adam can attest to this, we've been kicked to the ground a lot lately with this administration. It's been a rough few years for us, and others have a perception outside of the U.S. that's not really true in cities like Boston and LA and San Diego. We are a different breed, and I think the World Cup showed the world that Boston is a great city and it's a welcoming city and it's a wonderful place to be. So that's where I'll start.
Thank you so much. Yeah, some great insights there, particularly around Bostonians falling in love with Boston. So, Adam, what was your stat or story from FIFA?
So first of all, echoing everything Martha said, I think all 11 host cities, we actually had an ongoing text string across the 39 days, and I think we missed that group quite a
I
bit.
miss it. I
It,
miss it.
yeah, it was terrific to be able to go through that together. So I won't repeat what Martha just said in terms of the RevPAR story. I think that's been well documented. To me, first I'll look at it on a national basis. I think there's no question that we had seen significant deterioration in how international visitors perceive the United States going into World Cup. And, all of us could have collectively spent millions of dollars on campaigns trying to encourage people to come here. I think part of the reason you saw depressed attendance is because of those perceptions. I mean, even some of the policies that haven't been enacted yet, things like the visa integrity fee, people believe those things were in place. So I think, as a proof positive that the US and our destinations are still incredibly welcoming to guests from around the world, I think the World Cup has set us up extremely well for things like the 2020 Olympic and Paralympic Games. Because I think the wonderful thing we heard from so many of the social media posts were people who were honest about it and said, I was apprehensive about coming to the United States. These are the things I had heard, but my experience has been anything but. So I think nothing could have restored the confidence more of the international traveler than the World Cup. I also think that ties in well to what we're trying to do with Brand USA right now. One of the terrific stats, because when you look at Brand USA's goal of trying to get people beyond the gateways and to go deeper into our communities, there's a terrific stat that US Travel just published that showed that roughly 3 out of every 4 World Cup visitors went on to other destinations within the United States. And so particularly as we're trying to advocate for Brand USA, both through the Visit USA Act and their reauthorization, these events really give us an opportunity to get people to do a deeper dive. Closer to home, I love what you said, Martha, about Bostonians falling back in love with their community. The stat that I'll look at is what you put up, Chris, in terms of what it did for our small business community. There's no question that the large businesses did extremely well, but I think the real highlight for us in Los Angeles was seeing how many people really did a deep dive into our neighborhoods. Los Angeles has some of the largest diaspora communities from around the world. And so people really were venturing out. And you had mentioned, 9 fan zones in another one of the host cities. We actually had not only our fan fest, but 10 fan activation zones. And they were intentionally staggered throughout the tournament because the goal was to get both locals and visitors out exploring the real diversity of people in place that make LA such a unique destination. So, I like the human interest stories, right? The story that illustrates the point. So we have a program called Yes LA that is designed to really break down systemic barriers for small and diverse-owned businesses. And we had put forth a small multi-generational restaurant and catering company called Cuernavaca Grill. Well, good news number one is they were selected to be one of the official culinary providers at the Fan Fest at the LA Memorial Coliseum. But the real story is because they were at the Coliseum, they've now been selected to be at every USC home game for the upcoming season. And that story was replicated dozens of times across our community. So I think what it really did was it elevated our small business community in a way that no other event could have.
Yeah. Yeah, some great insights. And that image we were looking at, Adam, that was one of your fan activations, was it? At one of the
Yeah,
which stadium was that in LA?
that was actually at the LA Memorial Coliseum. And for those of you who are into EDM, that's Steve Aoki, who's an incredibly well-known DJ, and Steve did an incredible set. Basically, you can see there was standing room only on the field at the Coliseum. That's where we had the Fan Fest. But then the fan activation zones were intentionally staggered. They were everywhere from Union Station right downtown out to the LA waterfront, Magic Johnson Park, the original farmers market. And so the idea was really to get people dispersed out to every region of LA. So this was just one part of that story.
Great. Thank you. Brent, you weren't a host city, but obviously you had visitors coming down from LA. What was a stat or a story that you wanted to share about the World Cup experience?
Yeah, well, we didn't have any World Cup games. We're not as lucky as Adam and Martha there, but we definitely were able to kind of lean into that World Cup story and introduce visitors to San Diego, especially from LA, and we'll talk about that later. But I think one of the best things was I think the fan zones here in San Diego just really, kind of building off of what Adam said, really kind of highlighted, the diversity and our cross-border connection with Mexico and San Diego. I mean, you can see right behind me here, this was, a watch party right there next to the water at Belmont Park. We had a watch party in Little Italy, and as an Italian, it was very sad not to have the, Italy team in the World Cup. But then, with San Diego FC really kind of leading this as their MLS team, they did one in Chula Vista and brought in, a band actually from Mexico. And when you have tens of thousands of people at a watch party like that, it was an amazing kind of sight to see. So knowing that, you know, we are this cross-border connection, we had so many people here rooting not only for Mexico, but for the US in just this like perfect, beautiful location. And people who were able to come down and still see their teams play and then go to the beach right afterwards.
Very good. Thanks
If
so
I can,
much.
if I can just, if I
Yeah,
can just
go
build
ahead,
off
Adam.
of that, I think knowing that we've likely got a lot of people on the call who, may not be hosting a quote mega event like a World Cup or Olympic Games. I think one of the themes I'd like to highlight is no matter what size your sporting or entertainment event is, I think if you focus, I love the way Martha described it. If you focus on community first, right? If you create a great experience for your community, it will be a great experience for visitors. And I think one of the things for a destination, no matter what size of the event is, no matter what size destination you are, is really using it as a catalyst for infrastructure improvements within the destination. No matter what destination you're in, there's no question there are things that happen like metro ridership. We've been trying to make it clear that we now have a world-class transit system in Los Angeles because international travelers already expect to use mass transit. Visitors actually were teaching Angelinos how you can get out of a car and use mass transit. So in terms of infrastructure improvements, I think these events can be catalytic for a destination of any size.
Yes, and there's a 20 plus billion-dollar investment going into public transport in LA, isn't there, Adam? And was the Olympics the stimulus for that, or was it just coincidental?
Coincidental because, as you said earlier, I think one of the reasons why the city was willing to backstop the Olympic Games again is LA has hosted both of its games back in 32 and in 84 at a profit. In fact, the surplus from the 84 games is still being used to this day to fund youth sports programming across the region. And that's why they insisted it was a no-build Olympics. That's actually the inside baseball on why softball is in Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
We don't have a facility large enough as a stadium, but the Softball Hall of Fame is in Oklahoma City. So, it's not that we're building anything for the games, but it really does galvanize the community to come together and talk about how do we really focus on the visitor experience. And so it's been a catalyst from that perspective. But, Metro's expansion in the run up to 28, the World Cup showed that you actually could use mass transit affordably and seamlessly in LA.
Yes. Carless Olympics is the objective, isn't it, for
Yeah.
2028? So why don't we look ahead to the mega events coming up that we talked about? So whether it's the Women's World Cup in soccer or the Rugby World Cup or the other events. I mean, Adam, I'll start with you because you've obviously got the Olympics. What other insights or lessons did you take from the FIFA World Cup that you're going to be applying to planning for the Olympics?
I think one of the biggest ones is, let's remember right now the US is having to punch above its weight. It's all the headwinds that you and Martha had mentioned earlier. And I think it's about collaboration. There are amazing destinations across the country. A lot of people, our hope is to break the record set in Paris. And a lot of people will be coming to Los Angeles for the Olympic and Paralympic Games, but people will also be going to Oklahoma City for the soccer championships. They'll be going to destinations across the country. I think one of my biggest takeaways from World Cup is the more we all collaborate across the US, the more it lifts everyone up, especially when you think about the fact that we're the only member of the G20 that does not have a cabinet level tourism minister. we're the only member of the G20 whose government is not funding what is one of our largest service exports. So I think it was really the incredible spirit of collaboration across all 11 US host cities. That is the way we should continue to approach mega events because it helps elevate the US as a global brand.
Yeah. Yeah, well said, and particularly with the funding challenges Brand USA has got at the moment, hopefully we can reverse that. So, Martha, what lessons are you looking forward to? I mean, hopefully you're going to be a host city for both the Women's Soccer World Cup and the Rugby World Cups. So, what are you taking out of the FIFA World Cup that you're going to be applying?
Yes, we are in the mix for both of those important events. I think for us, what we really leaned into for World Cup in particular. And, as I said, Scotland, as you can see here, this was our Welcome World campaign where we were part of an offshoot of it. This was out of home advertising in Scotland, but we ended up getting a really good draw for the World Cup here in Boston. And not only did we get some superb teams that were going to go very far. In fact, France home based here in downtown Boston. I mean, that was, you've got Mbappe walking around the streets of Boston for 40 days. That you can't script that kind of thing. So we were really excited that we had France, we had Germany, we had Spain here. Those are gifts. But beyond that, I think what we really learned and what we will do with events going forward is, and Adam mentioned this with the neighborhood activations, leaning into your local diaspora and really bringing them into the fold and getting them excited about the event. Now, we also had Haiti play here. Boston has the second largest Haitian population in America. We had Morocco playing here, second largest Moroccan population in the United States. So don't overlook those teams, even though Haiti's not going to win the World Cup. Morocco actually did pretty darn well. But don't overlook those teams that can bring the passion of local communities to the sport. Because it's a gift for those communities to have their teams playing here. But B, that creates an environment for visitors that you can't do. You can't do that on your own. A DMO could never do that. So, we had Scotland played Haiti in the first match. Haiti did a march in downtown Boston because we have so many Haitians living here. And sadly, Haitians from Haiti could not fly into the U.S., thanks to U.S. policy. But the fact, and Haitians did come in from all over the region, the Scots joined right in with their bagpipes, and it was this beautiful melding of incredible cultures that grew organically in Boston. And that happened with the Moroccans and the Egyptians and really just so many of the teams that played here. We're going to really lean into that for the Rugby World Cup and for the women's soccer. We just really feel like, we have such a diverse community here in Boston. We are a majority city. We have more non-English whites than we do other nationalities here, and we lean into that, and that's what becomes this incredible cultural, and you can see by this Welcome World poster, this incredible cultural melting pot. So we're going to work really hard on that. Brent, I feel you about Italy. We have a huge Italian presence here, as you know, a huge North End is our huge little Italy. Our dream was that Ireland and Italy would make the World Cup and play here in Boston, and I think with rugby, that's probably a little bit more of a likely scenario, at least with Ireland. But anyway, we're really going to lean into that. And also, I think just the idea of Bostonians falling in love with Boston. What we learned is planning these events is hard. Like, we got reamed by the Boston Globe for months leading up to these events. It was painful. But at the end of the day, once that first ball was dropped, it was beautiful. And of course, the press turned on a dime and everyone's all over it now. This is the best thing we've ever done. We've got to capture that moment. We've got to capture that momentum. We're forming a sports commission now. We have never had a formal sports commission. Meet Boston served as a sports commission. So we really want to form an entity that captures this momentum not duplicates our efforts, but really supplements it from a financial perspective and from an operational perspective. And I think, Bostonians love to hate on Boston, and they love to hate on the fact that we think we can't do anything right. I think most cities have that sort of feature about them, unfortunately. But the World Cup really showed this region that we got this, we can do this, and we're super excited to host these large events again in the coming years. So that's what we really learned. And we have a sister city, by the way. Glasgow is going to become an official sister city of Boston. You saw some of the out of home that we did, sort of tongue in cheek, playing off the no Scotland, no party theme. We did the no Boston, no party theme here in Scotland. These were out of home advertisements. So we'll keep doing this and just spreading the word throughout the world that, Boston is really, it's the place to be when you want to host mega sports events.
Yeah.
And by the way,
Great.
we're small. Boston is not LA, Adam. You know that. We are a 700 less than 700,000 population here,
Yeah.
but we certainly know how to punch above our weight, and we have great product, and we are, as you all know, fiercely fanatical about our sports.
Small but mighty.
Small but mighty.
So, Brent, let me call you in. As most of the people on the audience today are not host cities and may not be with these future events, do you want to take us through the playbook for the FIFA World Cup? How you thought about trying to attract visitors and leverage off the FIFA World Cup? What you implemented, what worked, what didn't work so well?
Yeah, so we're lucky enough to be close to LA. So we were able to kind of really lean into that. But kind of building off of what Martha was saying, one thing that happened months, if not years beforehand, was attracting teams to base camp in San Diego. We do have a sports commission, San Diego Sports, and we worked in hand with them. And we were lucky enough to get Switzerland and New Zealand actually here in San Diego as a base camp. And while that, is not, a tons of international fans, that's still room nights within the destination. They stayed at the Fairmont Grand Del Mar, those lucky Swiss, and then at the Hyatt Regency in La Jolla. So they were able to kind of come to San Diego and really kind of highlight that we have the facilities to host these world-class teams. And then, once the games kind of actually started and building up to that from a more tactical perspective, of course, we developed content for our website, right? We had social content kind of highlighting what was happening here. But we also partnered with Visit California. That's our state level agency to really kind of lean into what they were doing. They ran a co-op with Expedia, and we took part in that to drive bookings to San Diego. We also focused in on knowing that, well, I like to think that San Diego, everybody knows San Diego, right? There's still, unfortunately, people who don't know. So we did some activations within LA itself with some billboards and some metro wraps highlighting San Diego, but also its proximity to Los Angeles, leaning into kind of like the 90 minutes. It was 90 miles to the bright side, so that you could be in LA, see a soccer game, and come down to San Diego within 90 minutes essentially. And then kind of on another level, we did do some international advertising to New Zealand and to Switzerland, just kind of highlighting that the teams were in here, and if they wanted to come watch their teams practice, which was hard to actually see because they were very secretive, you could still make San Diego your home destination. So we kind of really leaned into that proximity, and really targeting people while they were coming to or planning their trips to Los Angeles and while they were in market, hopefully setting us up for a lot more success in LA 2028. Where we will actually be hosting 8 soccer games, the women's bronze game. So hopefully people on the call will come and watch that. And we also like to claim that we will be hosting surfing. It is at the very north end of San Diego County, it can be argued. where it is, but we're still going to kind of claim that. So we will be able to take a lot more advantage of the Olympics, since we will actually have Olympics in San Diego.
Yeah,
Well, Brent,
yeah.
if France can claim Tahiti for surfing as being part of it, I think you guys can credibly claim that.
Yeah.
And building off of that, it worked both ways. If there's a visual we can pull up, one of the things we recognized is because there weren't World Cup matches in San Diego, we actually worked with Amtrak for the Pacific Surfliner. And so they were terrific partners. They actually gave a 20% discount on fares from anyone who wanted to travel up to Los Angeles for the Fan Fest, for the activations, for any of the match days. And as you see here, they allowed us to use it as an incredible branding platform, where the Pacific Surfliner for the entire 39-day tournament had our World Cup branding. And what was remarkable is they showed a significant bump in ridership. We were talking about over a 25% increase in ridership on the Pacific Surfliner during that time frame. So I think that's something, especially for destinations of all sizes here, is trying to piggyback off of events that are happening in some of your neighboring jurisdictions, because there absolutely is that opportunity to drive it. And I saw Wendy Keel's comment. Couldn't agree more, Wendy. There's a piece that we can pull up, and I think all 11 host cities have done this. You know, we were doing a lot of social posts that took all of those great stories from international visitors talking about what they loved most about coming to the United States. And I think seeing these stories amplified in the media is part of what has really restored confidence in the US. And I give a huge shout out to Angie Briggs from Brand USA, because she's actually been compiling this across all 11 host cities, and they've been putting out an organic content piece, really having international travelers tell the rest of the world why they should be coming back to the US. So I totally agree with you, Wendy. And I do think the media did a much better job of telling the positive stories than, Wendy, we've seen over the last couple of years.
Yeah, very good. And just a reminder to our audience, if you've got any questions for the panel, please pop those in either the chat or the Q&A. Martha, do you want to share any perspectives from Boston's side of working with surrounding states or cities? I know Rhode Island was very tactical in terms of leveraging off. They probably let you do all the
may
work,
have been
and
a
then they
little bit,
leveraged off.
they may have ridden the coattails a little bit, but it all worked out great in the end. They did a fabulous job. They hosted their own fan zone. Well, we had 16 fan zones across the region, and we're a small geographic area, and they spanned everywhere from down in Brockton, Mass, which is a very large Dominican population and Cape Verdean population. We all know they were a standout team in the World Cup and did some really fun things. So, 16 communities across the region hosted fan zones. But also, I will say too, just to Brent and Adam's point, we hosted Scotland and they had two back-to-back matches here, but they were almost a week apart. And so we saw, I followed, first of all, we had a member of our team embed themselves, and this is a really good tip for anyone that's doing hosting international groups again. We embedded ourselves in the social media feeds of the different fan groups coming. So, the Tartan Army was there, the name of the fan group from Scotland. I managed the Tartan Army fan group on behalf of Meet Boston. Someone else managed France. Someone else managed England, so that we could answer any questions that people might have, give them advice, point them towards our resources if appropriate, but not being overbearing in that regard. But when Scotland had the break in the matches, we were fearful that they were leaving us, and they weren't. But they were checking out of their hotels in Boston, and they were going to Maine and New Hampshire and Cape Cod and Newport, Rhode Island. And to the Brand USA point, those are destinations that don't have huge marketing budgets, but they could definitely leverage large events coming into the Boston area to, get people to make those side trips. And we know people did. We know the Scots and their kilts were all the way up in northern New England, in Portland, Maine, having a fabulous time. So I would definitely echo that it's really important that you be strategic. It doesn't have to cost you a lot of money. You don't have to, put on these huge ad campaigns. Just by ferreting out social media channels that have enormous followings, you can get your message through to so many people in a much more organic way than you would, even producing our out of home ads or doing something, more formalized in digital advertising. So I would definitely echo that people were here in Boston for the matches. And by the way, our stadium is like Adams, it's a little bit outside of the city. It's, 30 miles south of here, but it didn't matter. People didn't care. They had one of the best fan experiences at Gillette Stadium. But people just had a fabulous time. Providence, Rhode Island did an awesome job of hosting the Ghanaian team stayed in Rhode Island as their base camp. And then they also had a fantastic fan zone and some really great activation. So I'm really glad that Boston was able to be the central point to really give that economic boost to the entire region. It really is very humbling.
Yeah,
Chris,
and
I'm sorry, go ahead, Chris.
well, I was just going to highlight, Adam, the training camp opportunities. So the FIFA World Cup went through this whole process of basically calling for applications and then vetting them and so on. But there were quite a number of training camps that didn't occur at any of those applicant cities. So Winston-Salem, for example, hosted the German national team because of other connections. So, these mega events provide other opportunities. I don't know if
The
any of
key,
you
the
can
key,
comment on
Chris,
that.
with that is to find out who has the money, because the teams that go outside, and this might be true for women's, I'm not sure, but the teams that go outside of what they call the book, which is the traditional book of available training sites that
Yeah,
FIFA is going to pay for, are the teams that can afford to foot the bill themselves.
yeah,
The French team bought out the entire Four Seasons Hotel in Boston for 35 days. And they used a college facility 20 miles away as their training, it's not even 20, 15 miles away as their training facility. Kansas City did a fabulous job of ferreting out England and those teams that had the money to go off book. So learn a little bit about the sports that you're hosting,
yeah.
and that'll help you develop a strategy for attracting sort of those, as we call them in the convention business, in conjunction with activities, right?
That's great
And Chris,
advice. Yeah,
you took the words out of my mouth. That's exactly what I was going to say. Is I think, when you look at the mega events that are happening, they represent incredible opportunities across the country. For example, I've been talking with the team in Loudon because they have an incredible equestrian community there. So we've been talking about, what opportunities there are for the torch relay, and we've been kicking around the idea of wouldn't it be incredible to have an Olympian from the Loudon community on horseback passing the Olympic torch to an Olympian from Los Angeles. So I think the more we can look at those opportunities, I think no matter what destination you are, there are incredible training facilities all across the US. Here in LA for World Cup, what we found is the US men's national team actually trained down at Great Park in Orange County because they quite intentionally wanted to be away from the media spotlight and the bubble. So I think there are those ancillary opportunities. And I think the other thing is recognizing how something like the World Cup has benefit for everyone on this call. Because when you look at something like the FIFA pass, right, we've all been talking for years about the fact that the US lags in terms of our ability to quickly and efficiently process visas, making sure that applies to MICE business. Well, if you look at the FIFA pass and its ability to expedite and streamline visa processing, one of the things that US travel has been advocating for is there is no reason why that should not apply to major conventions, other events, MICE business. They've built the mechanism for it. And that's something that benefits absolutely everyone on this call. And also, Wendy Kill had put in the comments, I love the public-private partnership aspect of this. And I think that applies to every destination. Working with your elected officials, a lot of the watch parties that were organized were actually done by city council members themselves. And they were so massively successful that they're now planning on replicating that for the Super Bowl that's coming up in 27 in Los Angeles.
Same here. Ours were, a lot of them were led by city council. I will say one other great takeaway we had from the World Cup. Boston is still a Puritan, Massachusetts is a Puritan state. Our liquor laws will reflect that. We have a 2 a.m. closing time here, and of course it's problematic for Europeans. We were able to get a temporary 3 a.m. closing time, but something else that we got that is going to be very important as we host future events, including potentially the DNC, which is looking at Boston, but also these major sporting events, is we got social districts approved, meaning you could carry liquor outdoors within a certain geographic area in Boston. That's a hugely European thing. We do it in New Orleans all the time. We know that. But that is something that I hope is, no pun intended, a hangover effect of the World Cup for the city of Boston, that we can continue to have those social districts, because they're a draw in and of themselves for locals, for people from the region that just want to come, be in the middle of the city, surrounded by, beautiful parks and buildings, and, having a glass of wine and walking from one business to another business and shopping and doing whatever it is they want to do. So that's another great takeaway that we had from the World Cup.
Yeah. And just to highlight and emphasize the importance of these watch parties and fan zones, I've been lucky enough to go to 4 Rugby World Cups, and I know our groups always look to go to communities which appear to be engaged with the World Cup. So they may not be a host city for but they've got watch parties, they've got pubs or other places where the locals are gathering. And for example, rugby is not such a big sport in the United States, but I know that the fans coming will be looking for communities which have connected with their rugby clubs and are able to provide those opportunities. So why don't we just talk quickly about advertising, social media, or any other marketing that worked well or didn't work so well? I mean, Brent, you shared some examples. Is there anything else you want to offer? Your head of digital marketing, is there anything you want to share in terms of what worked or didn't work so well, or you'll be looking to apply these upcoming events?
Yeah, I think as we kind of look forward, everyone here has their set of owned channels, right? So you have your website, your email, and your social media programs, and really kind of take advantage of that, especially as people are starting to plan or thinking about it. Lean into the nitty-gritty can really help you. I was just actually at Esto listening to, I think, Eileen and Erica from Visit California and Discover LA talking about the efforts they did. And something that we did as well was, as I said, Europeans don't know where we are or might not know where we are. And so providing that information, like Adam was saying, like the train rides, the train that you can take to get there, the distance, all of that type of stuff that you might not think needs to be said, should be said for destinations that are outside of, the major event areas. And set that up as soon as you know. And then additionally, I would say don't just make it about the event, make it about everything that you have in your destination, everything that's great, right? We were lucky enough to have NASCAR here in San Diego back in June, and they didn't really need help selling. It sold out, right? They were driving cars on North Island Naval Base. So we really focused in on what they can do outside of the event, all the great things that are happening around. It was Father's Day weekend, right? Beer, golf, family. So taking a look at like the travelers who are going to be coming and kind of building content around them. And then on the social side, I think it's been said here, take advantage of anything and everything you possibly can. I mean, I really wanted to take advantage of the Switzerland put out a map of their training facility, and it just had a big area that said snakes because it was right next to a canyon and then we're a desert, but I got that one shot down. But there are plenty of other great opportunities to kind of highlight, and we call it news jacking, right? If something big is happening, how can you take that and relate it to your destination? And then last but not least, like really lean into that state level and their efforts and be a squeaky wheel. Really get in there and let them know who you are and what you have to offer. Brand USA put out a map of all the the training areas. And, I'm just going to say this, they left San Diego off of that. We got them to put that back on there. So really like look at what everyone else is doing and make sure that you are there and that your content reflects the content that you have on your website, so that when people are searching, whether they're doing it through AI or just regular good old fashioned Google, they're now able to see you associated with the larger destination or event, and then also know how to get there and why they should be making that effort to go outside of that larger area.
Very
Brent, I
good.
really want to give a shameless plug for what you were talking about in terms of work with your state tourism office. I mean, Visit California has done a phenomenal job of leveraging these major events. And, in California, we like to talk about getting people traveling vertically more than horizontally. So I think that's something everyone can tap into. I see Carly's question, and the answer is yeah, there was a huge, I mean, we approached this as a fully integrated strategy. And I think part of it is, I love what you said, Brent, start early, start when people are in the aspirational phase, long before they get further down into the funnel until the actual trip planning. And so what we were doing is encouraging people to start their World Cup experience in Los Angeles because it's a major international gateway. We knew we had the opportunity to have a captive audience for an extended period of time. And that included out of market activations that focused on things like, because we were lucky enough to have Sun Heung-min playing for LAFC, at K-pop Square in Seoul, we did a huge 3D billboard, and LAFC partnered with us to show Sunny and four other LAFC players. Now, obviously, we were tying that into World Cup, but what that also did is it did it to help promote our 11 professional sports teams. We did the same thing with the takeover of Waterloo Station, where we really wanted to get a captive audience to start thinking about LA as not just a host city for the games themselves, but as a great jumping off point. And in terms of earned media, we were doing a lot to host earned media in the run up to the games to show them not just SoFi Stadium, but all the incredible venues we have. And that really paid dividends in terms of earned media stories talking about why LA has emerged as really one of the sporting capitals of the world. So I think what I would say to every destination on the call is when people are leaving your destination, what are the 2 or 3 most important things you want them to leave with? And that should really drive your strategy.
I would just add to what Adam and Brent just said. First off, from an earned media perspective, start early. We were fortunate that we had a France Brazil friendly in at Gillette in March of last year, or this past March, leading up to the World Cup. So we worked with our French agency and ended up bringing over a delegation of travel journalists from France for that match to show them exactly what's that experience going to be like at Gillette. But they stayed for 3 or 4 days and they did everything else that we, could imagine in the city to get to experience, what Boston has to offer. And then as far as, the other elements, I think we all incorporate obviously a very uh, integrated strategy with utilizing digital advertising and social, etc. In the moment, though, don't overlook in the moment and getting that last minute traveler to come to your area because it's an aha moment. Our social media team was everywhere. I mean, when I say everywhere, we only have 3 people on that team, but they were at FanFest every day. We had a videographer, hired a videographer. Social team was there. They featured the food that was being served, the cultural entertainment that was happening. We created FOMO. And that's when we realized we were getting last minute bookings, particularly from Scotland. We made sure that the world saw what was going on here in Boston with the Scots. And it was amazing to see the last minute bookings. I'm following in the Tartan Army feed, the social media feed, and I am watching people saying, we're booking our tickets now. We don't have World Cup tickets, but we are going to Boston because we just want to be part of that scene. So create FOMO. I think that's really the best way to get in the moment, for the moment business, but also people thinking about, wow, I got to go there sometime in the future.
Thank you
I'll
so
just add on to
much.
that real quick from what Martha just mentioned is based on our work with Visit California and Expedia, we saw people booking within 6 days. So that as you said, they were already like in
Mhm.
market or they were on their way, and then they saw us and they kind of booked down there. I would also say don't forget about, locals and your drive markets. One just anecdotal number is on our content for the World Cup. The number one source of traffic to that content was actually from Los Angeles. So I don't know if that's Angelinos or if that's people visiting, but people were looking as well for those things outside of the destination. So all that last minute stuff is also good to take advantage of.
Very good. So thanks so much, everybody. Martha, Adam, Brent, wonderful insights. We'll be sharing the resources from today. Just a reminder that we've got on September the 15th, the Traveller Segments Edition. Adam Sachs is going to be joining us and looking at the K-shaped economy traveller, the trends and issues over the last 25 years in terms of income and how that shaped travel behaviour. And so hopefully you can join us then. And thanks again to our panel today, and thank you to all of you. We look forward to connecting with you soon. Thanks again.